Hey, I hope you're doing well. I'm glad that you're watching this. Hopefully, you're going to have some great things to discuss when we're done. I want to tell you about one of the things that we do in my family. Whenever the Mega Millions lottery prize gets to be $500 or $600 million, we do this at our house. We start talking about what we would do if we won the Mega Millions lottery. What would we spend the $500 or $600 million on? And so we've talked about buying an island, buying a private jet, going on a trip around the world, having a swimming pool for each person in our family, all sorts of crazy things. And the reason that we do that, and maybe the reason you do that, is because we always assume that if we had something more, if we had more than we have now, we could be happier. Life would be better, that we would be flourishing in life. But here's what we know, is that that's not always the case. There are lots of people who've won the lottery through the year who've ended up poorer than they were before they won the lottery. There was a guy in Pennsylvania, I was reading about him a couple of days ago, won the lottery, ended up in debt, and then his brother-in-law took out a hit on him, thinking that if he took this guy out, that his sister would give him money. It didn't work out even for this guy's family. Sometimes more is not more life. But here's the interesting thing. In Scripture, particularly in the life of Jesus, Jesus talks about life with us. He tells us that he came that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And that was a theme in his teaching, discovering life, a flourishing life, an abundant life. When Paul was writing to Timothy, one of his young disciples, he starts talking to him in 1 Timothy chapter 6 about teaching others about the life that is really life. So what is it? What is the life that is really life? We know that it's not some things. We know that it's not more money. We know that it's not always more to do. It's not always more stuff. So what is it? We find the flourishing life, the abundant life, really in the life of Jesus. Jesus lived this life for 3 years, and he taught and he did miracles and he changed people's lives. But when you really look closely at his life, there were two things that he had that I think point us to the flourishing life. Jesus had amazing authority, and Jesus had unbelievable vulnerability. Jesus had authority. And when I say authority, I mean the ability to make meaningful decisions. Jesus made meaningful decisions about his life, how he would minister to people, how he would serve other people. He had the ability to make meaningful decisions for his life. He had that kind of authority. And you and I can have that kind of authority. We can have the ability to make meaningful decisions about how we're going to spend our time or our money, how we're going to serve other people as well. We all have the power, the authority to make meaningful decisions. But the other thing that Jesus had was unbelievable vulnerability over and over again in his life. He was willing to risk it all for people. He invited prostitutes and tax collectors to have meals with him. He spent a lot of time with women. He spent time with Gentiles, teaching them about the coming of the Messiah. Over and over, we see a Jesus who's really willing to risk everything, willing to risk his reputation, willing to risk his own life in meaningful ways for others. And when you put it all together, even the last few days of Jesus' life were about those things, about meaningful decisions and meaningful risk, about authority and vulnerability. He used his authority to teach his disciples at the Last Supper. But then he had unbelievable vulnerability, giving up his life for others. This is what it means for us. And I want to challenge you to think about, what does it mean to make meaningful decisions? But not just to make meaningful decisions, what does it mean to have meaningful risk in your life? Willing to risk who you are, what you have for others. Let me tell you a story. I want to read just a bit of the story to you. It's about a small village in France. Village in 1940, Germany invaded France. And Germany immediately, once they invaded France, began to gather up all the Jews. Well, in this mountainous village, Huguenot Christians who lived there decided they wouldn't be that. They wouldn't salute the German flag. They wouldn't be a part of rounding up any Jews. And so they became a haven. Jews came there to hide. Lots of Jewish children came to this little village in the French mountains. Here's what happened. One day, a German officer came up expecting the people of this little village to gather around, to celebrate the Nazis, to bring out any Jews that they were hiding. When the German commander got to the arena where they were supposed to have a big celebration, it was almost empty. And there were some school children there, some teenagers, probably about your age, who walked up to the German commander and handed him a letter. I just want to read to you just a piece of that letter. The letter said this: "If our comrades, whose only fault is to be born in another religion, receive the order to let themselves be deported or even examined, they would disobey the order received, and we would try to hide them as best we could." And then they said this in the letter to the German commander: "We have Jews, you're not getting them." They were exercising their authority, making a meaningful decision, but they were also exercising vulnerability, offering meaningful risk. They could have been jailed. They could have been killed for this action. So what might it mean for you at school tomorrow? To practice authority, to use your authority to make meaningful decisions, but also to look at others that you see there and be willing to risk it all in love for them. Jesus' life offers us the pattern for our life, to make meaningful choices, but then meaningful risk as well. Because in all, just as Jesus' life was, our life is bound up in love. So talk about what it might mean. Meaningful choices, meaningful risk.